All right, well, here I just wanted to show you a little bit about the process of preparing files for a animation in After Effects. It's going to be actually a faux 3D animation. That means it's going to be a collection of flat frames set in a 3D space. And then that creates a strange sort of 3D effect. And right now we're just looking at the original photo. This is the photo I have of some sort of auto polo derby in, I think, Chicago, about 100 years ago, it looks like, or more or less. And so what we're going to do is, you see how it's the car and the guys are kind of positioned in this way. What we're going to try to do is recreate that, but in a 3D manner, so that in After Effects we can move a virtual camera around it and create some dynamism and something interesting to look at. This is for the video for the song Many Miles by our virtual psychedelic rock band called Nabucco Dinosaur. We have a page on SoundCloud and also on Bandcamp, and some of our videos are hosted at the Think Root Records YouTube page. So if you're not familiar with our work, you can go and check that out. I'll write the links in the description. Okay, so here you go. What I did was I isolated everything, or the car, from the background. And I do that with a combination of using the pen tool and also the lasso, this angle lasso selection tool, or sometimes just the plain old lasso tool. This is all in Photoshop. This is basic Photoshop stuff. As you can see, I've just filmed the screen because there's nothing really technical to explain here. There's no tricky stuff. It's just basically using those three tools, the pen tool to make a vectorized selection. And here you can see I'm showing each of the individual pieces. So what I do first is I cut out the entire subject that we want to isolate. I get that isolated, and then go in and cut apart the isolated image, and then that way each part which we cut, like for instance, you can see the guy here, he's holding a hammer, and the wheels are separated. What we can do then is, in After Effects, when we're going to animate, we can set those in different areas in a 3D place. It'd be like, you know, those cardboard little sculptures you can get. You punch them out of a piece of cardboard, and here showing some more of the other pieces which have already been isolated. I've worked on this already, finished quite a bit here. So there's the engine block, and that's done in two parts, and here's the driver in the back. And you can't tell now, but these guys are also cut into a few different pieces themselves, so that their arms and legs will come forward, and so they give them a little bit of dimensionality when we finally go to animate the image. This auto polo guys. So there are all the pieces, and they're sort of sandwiched one on top of each other. It's as if you were taking like a set for a stage set or something like that, just these flat panels. And there it is, the whole thing, you can see. And it's going to be a bit strange because of the aspect that the photo was shot. The wheels are actually circular here, whereas in the image they're more ovoid. And because of the angle of the camera that I shot the screen here, they look a little bit more oval, but trust me, they're perfectly circular. And we're relying on what's called image mapping, and this is what's done in traditional 3D as well. Is what you do is you create the 3D shape, and then you paint something over it, like with adding shadows and perhaps a texture. Like if you're gonna do Shrek, you'd put some wrinkles around his eyes, and for example, things like that. So here we go again. So what happens is, even if the pieces don't look completely what I'm going to do now is, I haven't done, is the steering wheel and the steering column. So that's why we're looking at it closely here. What's going to happen is that the shadows and the light the contrast in the image is going to aid in tricking your eye to think that these flat planes assembled in a 3D space are actually more 3D than they are, more naturalistic than they are. Now here, I'm about to select the pen tool, and I'm going to create a mask, so to speak, around the steering wheel so that I can isolate the steering wheel. And I'm putting the points, dragging the Bezier handles a little bit to sort of get it to follow the curve of the steering wheel. You see that there? And then I'll go through and do it all around, and then finally you'll be able to see how I can isolate the steering wheel and make that one element that can be arranged in a 3D space. So, you know, this is getting a little bit strange. I might want to, a little bit slow, a little bit long. So I think I'm going to speed up the video a little bit here. Be right back. Now, I've sped up the footage just a little bit, and you can see I'm going around still with the pen tool. It's a little bit hard to see here if you're watching on a small screen, but I'm selecting the whole steering wheel there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the panel in Photoshop and make the selection based upon that shape I just drew with the pen tool. I duplicate that, place it exactly where it was in the original file, and then turn off the original file, and you can see got the steering wheel isolated. Problem with this though is we still have the steering column and the dude's sweater in the background. So what I'm doing here, again taking the pen tool, tracing that little interior shape, then we make that selection, invert it, and delete it. So what we're trying to do is just get down to just the steering wheel. Same thing right here, select, delete, voila. You can see what's going on when I turn on and off the layer in the background, which has the entire cutout derby car. Okay, so here we see a close-up. I've done a little bit more work. We jumped into that because my camera only can film video at 10.5 minutes per time. Now right here, I'm going in and rebuilding the parts that disappeared. So here is a little nodule where the steering wheel fastens to the steering column. And so what I'm doing is I made a selection, and now I'm redrawing what I imagine that would look like if it was an actual physical object and we could take it away. Now it doesn't have to be super detailed because this is just one small tiny aspect. What I'm doing is using the paintbrush tool, and I'm using the picker. And on Mac what you do is you'll hold down the Alt key, and you can choose adjacent colors from the photograph. And so I'm just painting, sort of using the colors that are already in the object to make everything sort of match. You can see my selection there, and then I can go in, and now I'm blurring it. Now I'm blurring the paint, the numeric paint, the digital paint that I just laid on there to make it look a little bit more naturalistic. Now you can see over on the left the guy's fingers are still there on the steering wheel, so I gotta get rid of those. So I'm just gonna paint over using the same technique, using the paintbrush tool with a maybe 3 or 4 pixel wide brush with a soft edge, and just painting in there using colors. And now I'm selecting the whole thing and blurring it to make it a little bit set in a little bit. And so it's like that. And now taking a blur tool, and I use the blur tool and also the smudge tool. Here, what I did just then, turned to all gray, was I put a background of gray on there so that there's no transparency. Like something might look like it's completely opaque, but there could be a bit of a transparency. And so you want everything opaque just because when in After Effects, when you go through processing, it calculates transparencies and so forth, and solids are a lot less shorter for processing time. Now here what I'm going to do is again excuse me, turn the steering wheel into a circle, because it's right here it's sort of a tilted ovoid. So what I do is I skew it on over so it's an oval standing straight up, and now I'm going to stretch it so that it's a perfect circle. Now again, the camera's off to the side, so it looks a little bit strange, a little bit janky. And again, we're jumping forward a little bit because I didn't notice that my camera had stopped recording. So here we are. Now I'm isolating the actual steering column, making the selection. Did that, erased or copied it, pasted it in the exact same place. And now I want this to be a right angled object image, because looking at some YouTube there, and because when we put it together in 3D in After Effects, it's just easier if everything is right angles, and then we can cheat by skewing and so forth, but in my experience it just works better if everything matches cleanly to begin with. So you can see right there how it's relates to the steering column. I'm going to take the steering column, make it a little bit more square, that is, so that when they're touching each other eventually in the 3D space, they're going to be a little bit more naturalistic. And here we are revealing all the hidden layers with all of the elements that I have isolated, based on the original image. So now it looks already quite a bit surrealistic, and I like that. And next we'll go and try to make the pieces fit together. And in the next episode, I had the idea of actually creating this as a physical object. So I don't know if I'm gonna have the strength to do so, but what I'd like to do is print out all of the pieces that I've isolated and modified, and then actually create in space a little model, like those. Sometimes you can get a dinosaur or something, and it's a bit like a puzzle, and you punch out the pieces, and then you fit the pieces of cardboard together, and you get a 3D shape out of that, but it's all made out of flat planes. A little bit something along those lines. So for the next video, we can continue adjusting the pieces so that if when printed and assembled in the After Effects 3D space, they'll fit together more easily, more nicely. Or maybe not. We'll see. All right. Questions, always welcome in the commentary. I hope you enjoyed this.